folks, and welcome to part 2 of my Jeep LJ home-built bumper build. You might remember in the last video that we got that far. What we have at this point is basically the top plate that will be the mounting for the winch. The plan was to come straight down and then do like a 45 and then back onto the frame, mounting my recovery points somewhere around here. Been thinking a bit about that, and I have some other ideas that I want to try out. So we're going to try to figure some of them out in this video. What I've got here are these big beefy recovery points. The idea is I will cut a rectangular hole out of this and sink this through it. Once it's through, it's going to get welded to the inside of the top plate and the back and front of this front plate. Once I figure out where they're going and get them mounted, then I can figure out what I want to do with the face of the bumper. Mounting these right is the most important thing in this bumper, if you ask me. If these don't get mounted right, then this entire bumper could be a hazard in an off-road situation where I've got to recover somebody from the front of my Jeep. I'm going to try to weld these in as many places as possible, flat out. So this mess right here is what I'm playing with. Let me try to walk you through this. Recovery point will go here. That means that this can't be messed with. Also might notice that I'm writing in red now because I picked up a paint marker. I just got one at like the craft department at Walmart. I don't know if it's the right thing to use, but it's working so far. I don't know if there's like a better choice. If you know what a better choice is for a paint marker for fabrication work, let me know. Right, so you see I've got a couple lines drawn here. This is the bottom of the frame, this line here. So that's where it has to go back and underneath. This is where I'd like to cut it and bend it back at a 45. These lines here, what I'm thinking is I'm going to come in at an angle, come down a little bit, back out at an angle, and then this will be recessed backward. Give the front of the bumper sort of an angular look right here. Just to sort of give it an extra sort of flare at the end of the bumper here. And then the cap at the end, I'll figure out what to do there. But I wanted to kind of sketch this out so I had an idea of what it was going to look like before I mounted the recovery point. Because once that's mounted, it ain't moving. The next thing I want to do is get the recovery point mounted. That's my next step. I'm going to try to get this cut out and then work on mounting the recovery point. So I have my holes cut. It fits pretty snug in there. The idea now is I'm going to clean up the edges a bit so I can get good penetration in my weld. Set these about where I want them, get them as straight as I can, and weld them in. What I have to do now is I'm trying to clean these edges up, kind of chamfer them a little bit so I get a better weld out of it. Can't really get in there with a grinder all that well. Plus, my grinding discs don't fit my grinder either, and I'm not as comfortable using them without a guard as I am with the flapper discs. I can't get in there with the flapper disc, so I'm using a file. You might wonder why I have so many grinding discs that don't fit my grinder. It's because I had a bigger grinder, and it's the one I was using for all of my projects, and it died. So I had to go back to my smaller grinder. I gotta get a new grinder too. Hey folks, if you want to support the channel, you can do so via Patreon, and I can buy a new grinder. So I have this all welded on the inside. My next goal is to figure out this thing I was playing with. So the idea here is I want to have kind of an angle here. Now, why did I just drill 2 holes in the face of this bumper? That's because right here is where these lines are going to intersect, and that hole is going to help make sure that I don't overcut with my grinder. When you have nicer tools like a plasma cutter, this isn't as necessary. All right, so I was cruising along, getting cuts done. Figured I'd stop and show you guys the progress. So this will be what I'm going to use for those angles I was talking about. So I have this cut and scored and ready to bend, and I started bending it, and I realized it was going really well. So I thought I would stop and show you guys the bend. This should just bend. I was doing it just before. There we go. I'm trying to get about a 45-degree angle there. Not exactly measuring it though. There we go. I think that'll be enough of a bend. So I'm going to attempt to figure out where the next cut needs to be before I figured out the angle and figured out where, and tack welded stuff. So this needs to be 4 inches to clear the frame. You can see the bend is just about at 4 inches. So what I did was I went from this flat surface and I marked right on there. And I went around to the front. And now what I should be able to do is draw a line straight across, and that'll be where the next bend is. Now that'll put the next bend 1.5 inches, 1.25 inches away from the last bend. So I really need to make sure this bend is good and solid with my tack before I make this bend. Otherwise I could deform that bend. Next is tack weld this and then make this next cut. So I'll tell you what, folks, I never really knew how useful these auto darkening helmets might be, but I can see right now, which is just amazing. Now remember, I said I want these to be a little more solid than just tacks. That's what I'm doing here. Alright, so I've made some progress here. I was concerned about the rigidity of these recovery points, so I decided, let me get my glove on because they're hot still. I decided to make this little truss or whatever support that I'm plug welding to the side of the block here and then welding all around the outer edge. So you can see I have that one already on and I have that one already fully done. But I just wanted to update that. I made these out of some angle that I had laying around. It's 3 inch on one side and I cut it down to 1 inch on the other because of how tall these are. So I could get good beads on each side. And they go, I just about have this one fit. Goes like that, and then I weld it in place. Which is tricky to weld because there's not a lot of room there. So that's what I'm doing right now. Alright folks, so I've been at this most of the day. Not quite as far as I want to be. I'm going to try to get about another hour in. What I want to do next is, at those marks I showed you, I'm going to cut across and bend backward. And that should give me the rough form of the bumper, finally. Then these 2 angled pieces, see those little shark bites? Those I need to make plates to cover up. And what that should give the bumper is this cool angular look. So I'm hoping that works out pretty well. And then I need to figure out what to do with the ends. And then at that point, the bumper is almost done. I'm about to put my last cutting disc on my grinder. And it's Coronageddon out there. So I don't know if I'm going to be able to go get some more. Is there a run on cutting discs as well as toilet paper? I hope not. I'll save you the boring details, but I'll say that I cannot get some more grinding discs until the end of the week, for reasons other than Coronageddon. So I've gotten a bit of work done since I last turned on the video. I've got most of a bumper now. You can see the frame through here, but you can see there's also plenty of room to make this angle that I'm talking about. In all, I'm pretty pleased with how this has turned out. Alright folks, so I'm starting the second day of this particular video. I just wanted to give you a quick overview of where I'm at the moment. So these slices here are going to become plates today. This, of course, as it comes out, right, it's going to kind of angle up to meet that. Start working on these plates right here. I'm going to take some of the plate that I have cut off, and I'm going to cut this shape. Maybe I'll cut it from cardboard first so I can get a better idea of basically what it's supposed to look like. All right, so I used my old cardboard trick. As you can see, it took me a couple tries. So I made this little template out of cardboard to fit here. What you should be able to tell here is that I have a nice little angle here, right? And then out at this end here, I'm going to figure out some kind of a cap, I think. I don't know how that's going to work out just yet, but there's going to be a lot of little fiddly bits like this to figure out. Up here, I've already got the piece traced on some steel that I've just clamped down to the bumper to cut. All Alright, so after just a tad bit of trial and error, I have this guy, which is about as close a fit as I think I'm going to get with the tools I have at hand. So I'm going to tack this guy in place, and then we can move on. Alright folks, so what I'm doing now is trying to figure out what to do on the end here. So I've got a lot of the finish welds done on the front and top, and basically the plan now is I'm going to build some kind of a cap that goes like this, and that'll be sort of the end. That'll sort of make this look a little more finished. Then this I'm going to maybe cut at some kind of an angle to give it a little more of a, I don't know, finished look. So what I'm going to do to try to figure these out is I'm using my good old friend, the cardboard, to sort of fashion myself a plate that seems to fit here. And then I'm going to make another one that fits here. And I'm just going to kind of wing this. I've got my kitchen scissors, and we're going to go kind of you can see I'm not even like measuring here, because I have other cardboard I can always fall back on if this piece ends up terrible. See, that's pretty close. And it's not even going to come back this far. I'll probably trim it. I think. That could do it. Maybe it's not the exact right dimensions, but that would finish off the end of the bumper. All right, so I've got some pieces of metal cut that kind of roughly match those templates you saw me cutting. This one's a little hot yet, but he's about fitted for right there. Trying to get him tacked in place. Then one of these guys will go here. Well, folks, here's the very roughly finished product. And I'm going to start grinding this thing, clean up some of these welds, get some of this spatter off of here. This is one thing left. I got to do this yet. I'm going to kind of go at an angle almost. Finish that up some. So this is what I was talking about, where I wanted to take this out of here. I basically just kind of eyeballed this. I made what looks vaguely geometrical, and I'm going to cut like this. I'm going to drill a hole in the middle here so we get a nice curved intersection there, and then we're going to go that way and cut that way and hope for the best. I did the same thing over there. All right, folks, so here it is, the mostly finished product. I've been over just about all of it with a flap disc at this point, and you can see that some of the welds have pits in them. I don't want to grind them any further down because many of them are very structural. You might remember that the important welds like this, and I think even these, are welded both inside and out, so I'm not too worried about the amount that I ground down. If you remember the part of the video where I said that I'm an excellent welder, you might want to go rewatch because I never said that. But there it is. There is the overall look of the bumper. I love the way this has turned out. So folks, I'm probably not going to cover painting it in the video. In fact, I may not have it painted by the time the video comes out. So what I want to hear from you guys is, how should I paint this? Should I just go black like the old bumper was? Or you may have seen in some of my other videos how I have been using this sort of two-step approach where I cover it in Rust-Oleum hammered silver and then dust it purple. I did that with my rocker guards. I did it with my skid plate. I could do it with this. So, opinions, folks. All right, folks. So, today should hopefully be the last day of this project. Let me show you around what I have to do at this point and why I think it's going to be tricky. So, here's the deal. I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 holes on each side of this bumper that needs to be drilled to mount it. My intention with this bumper is to utilize all 4 of these and this one on both sides of the frame. So the tricky part here is, when I put the bumper in place, it covers all these holes, so I can't see them. So what I need to be able to do is somehow transfer these 4 holes and this bottom one to the bumper. I could do this by measuring again and again and again and trying to get as precise as possible, and then drilling holes in the bumper and hoping for the best. That doesn't usually go so well for me. So what I'm going to do is try to find a way to kind of mark these while the bumper's not here, and then transfer that through to the bumper. So let me get set up here and I'll show you how I intend to try to transfer these holes through. So here's my crazy idea. I've taken this piece of copper wire, just a piece of copper ground wire, and what I'm going to do is I have it clamped on there with a C-clamp. Now what I'm going to do is basically bend it to line up with the center of one of these holes, so that when I slide the bumper on, it'll be above the bumper. So I need to make sure I leave clearance to get the bumper on. So let me try to get this just right to the center. Okay, that is the middle of this hole. Now what I'm going to do is try to get the bumper on there in the inch or so of clearance I've left myself without, without bending this wire. Okay. Center of that cross is where I should drill my hole. So we got the first hole drilled. This bolt, I measured it, is about a 1/2 inch. So I drilled this hole to about 9/16 just to give me a little bit of wiggle room. You can see this fits through here perfect. What I did then is I used my mallet to lightly tap the bumper until everything is right where I want it. I used this little tab on the grill as a measuring point, and I measured out from there 10 3/4 inches to the face of the bumper, so the thing should be roughly square in relative position to the grill, which I think is what's going to matter as far as look is concerned. So what I'm going to do now is mark the second hole on the front here. I'm not going to show you every single bolt. I just did this to give you an idea of how I'm doing this. I'm going to mark for this one, which I've already lined up, and that's where the next hole goes. Well, folks, here they are. I've got the holes all drilled. It took me like 3 hours, which is longer than I hoped it was going to take. But, you know, that's par for the course. I have the factory bolts in here. The bolts are too long because they're meant to go along with these death spikes. But I wanted to put bolts in there to show you they fit. So at any rate, they don't go all the way in because they're meant to have this big spacer on them. So that's why they're not all the way in, but they fit. I don't have the new hardware yet. I found this one bolt that fits where the old sway bar used to be, and I've been using that to test all of my mounts here. And as you can see, they work. I got the bottom ones, the factory bolts are in there, they fit. I've got it as done as it's going to get for this video. There's a couple little things I want to do to really finish it up before I paint it, but you've got the bulk of what needs to happen to make yourself a bumper. And when I get a winch, I will build a winch plate for the top of this. I mean, the bulk of the winch plate's already here, but I'll drill for it and I'll get guard on the front to house the fairlead for the winch. But there it is. So folks, thank you for watching. I hope this video and part 1 of this video has shown you a little bit of the effort that goes into building a bumper at home. And hopefully it's inspired you to try to build your own. Or maybe it's shown you that paying $300 or $400 for a bumper, maybe not such a bad cost. In all, this whole process, I'd say, came in under 200 bucks. Took me probably 4 to 6 solid days if I were to work on it for 8 or more hours for each of those days. Because I got at least 2 of those days that were solid, like 8-hour days, and a lot of here and there. Like today, I spent 3 to 4 hours doing just these holes. So there you go, folks. That's that. One TJLJ bumper made from one plate of 3/16" steel. I know I'm not a professional fabricator, but I learned a lot making this project, and what I'm going to do is, in a future video, I'm going to actually take this thing out and test it, because I want to be sure it's not going to be a problem on the trail. So, and I recommend that if you build yourself a bumper, give it a good test before you're out in the field, because the last thing you want to do is build something that then hurts somebody later. So just be careful. So that's it for this time. Thanks for watching, folks. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I hope you learned something about how to just get in your garage and start building. So until next time, folks, I'm Nate, and have a good one. Hey you! You stuck around to the end of the video. You're awesome! You should probably hit the subscribe link up over here, and make sure you hit the notification bell, otherwise YouTube's not going to actually tell you when I produce something new. You can also support me via Patreon by clicking the link up over here. And if you like this video, you should probably check out the recommended content that's coming up down over here. If you want merch like I'm wearing right here, you should go to SWBCrawler.com and check out my shirts and hats and whatever else I've got for sale. Thanks for watching.